So I'm going to brave the weather here and see if I can paint our Iceland poppies and the little garden bunny. One of the things you could do is do little borders and do little mini drawings with ink and watercolor. So you can see I've started to ink these. I started with pencil, inked them, and then just splashed a little watercolor. You don't even have to stay in the lines because the ink will stay there and create the drawing. So it's all about getting a good contour drawing. Here's one we did when we were in Hawaii. And so I drew the palm tree with the hit pens and then painted around it. Okay, so I'm looking at the poppies and I've got my pencil and I'm going to think about my composition. It looks like I want to do a vertical one. And so I'm going to do a little quick gesture. We've talked about gesture to get a sense of where the placement is of everything. So I'm just sort of scribbling the bunny in there. And then I've got some of the red poppies here. And then some of the bigger orange ones. And I like these little blooms or blossoms. I think I might move one around. There's a nice orange one that's out of the picture, so I might put it right here. And then there's all these little buds coming out here. So I've kind of got a sense of my composition. Now I'm going to do contour drawing. So I'm going to slowly start on the ear of the bunny and follow the edge of it with my eye and record the lines that my eye is seeing. And you can erase if you don't like what you got there. I'm looking at where one line meets another, like on the head is coming out right about there on the ear. So I look at relationships. If you're just starting out, it would be good for you to watch that contour drawing video. So I've kind of got that little guy in there. Now I'm going to do one of the poppies here. And they've got 4 petals. This petal is kind of twisting around. So I followed that. And you can move things around. It doesn't have to be exactly in this position that you've drawn it. This one's more open because it's getting near the end. And then I'll put in those there's some little hairy things in the middle there. Here's another one. This little scallopy thing in the middle there. This one actually has more than 4 petals. I was wrong. And I noticed there's a break in between the petals. So I'm drawing that. There's another petal underneath. And where does the stem come out? It's kind of, I'm looking down at it, so it's coming out from underneath there. And then we have this little guy here that hasn't opened up yet. And this one that's starting to get a little color in it on the side. And then I love these hanging over ones. Don't be afraid to overlap things if there's, and this is a pretty complicated composition, so you don't have to get quite that complicated. Here's some more red ones, more wrinkly ones. They're smaller. I guess there's lots of different varieties of these things. And I'm going a little bit fast so this video isn't too long. But with contour drawing, you should slow down a little bit or simplify your subject so you don't take too long, so you don't feel like you have to start speeding up and then all of a sudden you've lost some things, you've forgotten some things, or you've missed some things because you've speeded up too much. Oh, I was going to put that other one there. Here, I'll put it down here. So, pay to erase. I've got my kneaded eraser and my white eraser. Actually, I'm gonna put it right here. I'm trying to place things so they are sort of scattered a little bit. I could actually even put it up here. Yeah, maybe I'll put it. And then once I start drawing these, I've noticed that there's a lot of wrinkles and so on in the flower itself, so I can create those with the pen. If it intimidates you to paint outside, right from life, take a picture and go inside and or have a bouquet or something. But it's a plant or a flower with waterproof pen and some watercolor. Now, if you want to put a border of some kind, you can. You can draw a little border around it and have some of the flowers break out of the border. That's always kind of nice. So then I won't have anything down here. Okay, so I've got a pretty loose drawing. Probably want to take a little more time. And I'm going to pick the M Pitt pen, which is kind of a medium. And again, I'm going to be studying my subject. I'm not just looking at my pencil drawing, but I'm going to re-look back so you don't miss things. You know that little game where you whisper something in somebody's ear and then they whisper to the next person? And if you're not careful, by the time you get to the end, it's a completely different whatever it was. Like Mary Had a Little Lamb becomes the Three Bears and Goldilocks. So go back to your original all the time and study it. Now, I'm sorry you can't see what I'm seeing on this video, but I will download the photograph so you can see what I was seeing after the fact. Now, this is kind of a subtle curve rather than an edge, but I'm going to go ahead and record. You have to make a decision about whether, if the curve is gentle and not a real abrupt edge, whether you're going to record it or not. There's a lot of little flowers in front of this guy, so I'll put some of those. They're like little pokey flowers. I'm not sure what they are. Little purple flowers. Don't forget, a stem is made out of a left and a right side, so you have some double lines. And I could go back in and add more later, more lines. So let me start on these poppies a little bit. Now here's where I want to start showing a little of that wiggliness of the petals. And if this pen starts to feel too fat, I can switch down to the F, which is fine, or S, which is super fine. They even have an XX, which is extra super fine. Whenever you can, try and get a little overlap in. I'm going to force this overlap a little bit more, because that's kind of what nature is like. And then try and follow. If it's a little wiggly, try and make it a little wiggly. And actually these stems have some lovely little hairy things sticking out of them. So I could go in and add those later. That's pretty typical of these Iceland poppies. I'll do just a couple more here, and then I'll throw some watercolor on it so you can see what that's going to be like. These are the little stamens and pistils, little knotty parts. That got Georgia O'Keeffe in some trouble. I'm going to hold off there because I still haven't decided about the border, whether I'm really going to do that or not. Let me do one of these deep red ones. They're a little bit more like crepe paper. They're very roughly from the way I'm seeing them. Boy, you really get to know something if you draw it. You think you know what something looks like, even an everyday thing like a toaster. And when you draw it, you see it maybe more clearly than you've ever seen it. You see things that you would have missed before. It's kind of nice to hear some of the birds out in the yard right now. I had a few things I was going to try and do this afternoon, and all of them were kind of things you don't want to do on cold, rainy weather. One of them was wash the car. Oh well. So far so good. It hasn't started pouring. So for variety, you might want to angle things a little bit different. Like instead of going straight up and down, maybe I'll angle this a little bit in a different angle and so on. So let's do I can see that some of these are more near the end of their life, and some of them are younger. So the center part looks a little bit different. Nice airplane flying over. Okay, so let's pretend I had finished all of this. I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and just erase all my pencil lines before. I'm not going to erase them all because I actually still have some more to do, but before you start painting, you'd want to erase your pencil lines. So now I have a white rabbit. How am I going to show that off? Well, you guys know about shading, so I can create some shading. Another thing I can do is paint dark around it. And that's where the border might be nice, so I don't have to paint the whole thing. So I could paint a darker green in here. And that might be something I do when I do my finishing up inside the studio. Okay, so I'm gonna take my water and let's do a somewhat medium brush here. And I'm gonna mix some blue, cobalt blue here. And if I put a little bit of burnt sienna or brown with it, I'll make a kind of a gray, like a blue gray, and I can show some shadow underneath this bunny. Actually, I'd kind of like to make it more interesting and go a little more blue. Just to put a little, and then I'll leave some of it pure white, but just want to get some shading in there. And you can see that starts to form a little bit of the bunny. And then later on, if I go in, I have a really dark green. It's called phthalo green, but it's too garish. So I'm gonna add a little burnt sienna to it and maybe a little ultramarine blue to create a nice deep dark green. And if I'm careful, this is still a little wet, but I could end up going around it right up to the edge, right up to that border. And you can see by contrast, that's making that little bunny pop out a little bit more. And I'm gonna take a brush that just is damp and I'm gonna soften it away. So it's darker next to the bunny. Gotta be careful or it's gonna run. It's never gonna dry out here today the way it's so wet. So Maybe I'll put a little lemon yellow in there and make it, I hope my head's not getting in the way. So there's that. I'm gonna stop there because I want to do these flowers. So this is, this first flower is kind of a nice orangey color. So I'm gonna use Scarlet Lake, which is an orangey red. And I'm going to add just a little bit of New Gamboge, which is a nice school bus yellow. And I'm going to water it down because it's kind of light. And I will go in and I'm going to make a little variety. I'm going to add a little extra orange on the edges. Maybe even a little deeper red, like a purpley red on it. So I'm just doing the edges right now. Then I'm going to take my little brush. I'll use the same brush. And it's just damp. It just got a little water on it, and sort of soften it away. It doesn't have a soaking lot of water, so soften it down. And what's nice is you still see that that ink line. Now the center of it is bright yellow. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and put the bright yellow. This, I can do that now. And then I'll, once again, sort of put some edges on it. What's nice is when this drawing is done, you can be a little sloppy about your watercolor. Oh, let me grab. That's okay. And accidents can happen like that. And your ink line is going to still be there. Your drawing, that wonderful drawing. Remember, we're taking a drawing class. So leave a little white of the paper in there. Add, while it's still wet, add a little extra deeper red. And you guys know how to make green. You could put a little yellow in with the blue. So I mixed some blue and yellow, and I'm going to put my and since there's a bunch of plants and leaves down here, I can go ahead and show that without even drawing it. I can just paint a bunch of leafy things down there like that. Let me do one more of these flowers. These, the ones on top are really darker red. So I'll go in and use what I have is permanent rose. Maybe throw a little orange in there. So it's not just one color, makes it more interesting. And in the center is yellow. So it should read as a poppy. Get some green. Bit of red starting to peek out of the side of that, starting to grow. This one here is a real bright orange, so I'll make it a mixture of red and orange and Scarlet Lake, and it's a deeper orange than these over here. And again, just a damp brush to kind of pull some color in. Okay, and I would do the same. And if you want to, you can even paint it first and then put the ink on it.
This was kind of a brown color.
Okay, so I would continue a lot more until I feel like it's done. I could leave this edge white around here. I could do some writing. So if you look back at these ones I showed at the beginning of the video, I wrote some stuff. It's a beautiful day to sketch outside. It's not as hot as it's been. This artistic birdhouse has been home for a bluebird family, and you know, I put the date. This is our sycamore tree, planted about 30 years ago, etc. So I have the date on there. This one, this says that I painted something dangerous. That was a sketchbook challenge, so this cactus is something dangerous, and I dated it. So if you want to put a little, and again, there's a border on this one. If you want to put some writing or some interesting borders on them, that's always nice to do. Here's another outdoor sketch of one of the bunnies and some succulents. Oh, and I wrote, this was in 2011, a power blackout means no school. That was when I was teaching full-time. So I got to sketch that day. Okay, so hope you have fun with this. And again, if I work a little bit more on it, I'll take some photos of the steps that I finished. Bye-bye.